Here it is. Yes. Unit 31, Grammar, B2. Let's get started. Okay, let's look at the past form of should. In a positive form, I had a test this morning. I didn't do well on the test because I didn't study for it last night. I should have studied last night. B. You were supposed to be here at 10 p.m., but you didn't come until midnight. We were worried about you. You should have called us. You didn't call. The past form of should is formed with should and then have and the past participle. You can also think of this as should plus the present perfect because have with the past participle is also the present perfect form. In A, I should have studied means that studying was a good idea, but I didn't do it. I made a mistake. I should have studied. The usual pronunciation of should have is should have or shoulda, because speaking very quickly, you should have called us. You should have called us. The negative form, my back hurts. I should not have carried that heavy box up 2 flights of stairs. I carried the box and now I'm sorry. We went to a movie, but it was a waste of time and money. We should not have gone to the movie. In C, I should not have carried means that I carried something, but it turned out, that means it ended or finished, to be a bad idea. I made a mistake. The usual pronunciation of should not have, shouldn't have, shouldn't have. We shouldn't have gone. We shouldn't have gone. So that's very fast. You can hear that. The past form of ought to is ought to have plus the past participle. I ought to have studied. It has the same meaning as the past form of should. In the past, should is used more commonly than ought to. Had better is used only rarely in the past form. He had better have taken care of it, and usually only in speaking, not in writing. He had better have taken care of it. I would say that's really stretching it. It's not so common. Much common, should have. Shouldn't have done it. Okay, let's look at degrees of certainties. Degrees of certainty. That means that you are expressing a very fine detail, something that is more advanced. And that is what we're going to see consistently in the B2 level. You're going to have more possibilities of expression. So here you are expressing different degrees of certainty, of sureness. Let's look at a past time affirmation. Why wasn't Mary in class? Okay, A, the affirmation, she was sick. This is 100% sure. The speaker is sure. B, 95%, she must have been sick. In B, the speaker is making a logical conclusion. I saw Mary yesterday. I found out, that means I discovered, that she was sick. I assume that is the reason why she was absent. I can't think of any other good reason. She must have been sick. I'm quite sure, but not quite 100%. Less than 50%, I can say she might have been sick, she may have been sick, she could have been sick. All of these express the idea that there is just one possibility in many. She may have been sick, she may have forgot, she may have had an accident, many things, but I'm saying just one possibility. Why didn't Sam eat? That's the negative. Sam wasn't hungry. Okay, so instead of expressing certainty in a present, an affirmative, a positive, I'm going to say Sam wasn't hungry. That's 100% sure. Now, 90%, 99%, I can say Sam couldn't have been hungry or Sam can't have been hungry. Both of these expressions, the speaker believes that it is impossible for Sam to have been hungry, but there is 1% of the chance that he was hungry. You see? So couldn't changes here. If I'm using a positive, he or she could have been sick, that's like 50-50. But could not have been sick is not 50%, it's 99%. So could changes in the negative. Let's look at F, 95%. Sam must not have been hungry. Okay, here I'm making a logical conclusion. This corresponds with the positive. She must have been sick. She must not have been sick, or Sam must not have been hungry. If it's less than 50%, I can say Sam may not have been hungry. Sam might not have been hungry. These are just one possibility in many. It corresponds more or less with the affirmative, right? He may not have been hungry. He may have been hungry. That's pretty much 50-50. If you want, you can do the exercise 3 in that course if you have done the self-study course. Let's look at future time degrees of certainty. In the future, 100% sure is K will do well on the test. I feel quite sure about this. 90% sure K should do well on the test, or K ought to do well on the test. The speaker is almost sure, 90% sure. Just going back to the 100%, if I say K is going to do well, it's pretty much sure the same here. Will and going to do, if you're talking about prediction, they're very, very similar. Less than 50%, she may do well on the test, she might do well on the test, she could do well on the test. So this is similar to what we saw before. This is 50%. It's like an affirmative. The speaker is guessing. Future and past time affirmative expectation. Now this is a little bit difficult to understand. What is expectation? Expectation is I imagine something. I'm really making a logical deduction, a kind of a conclusion. Kay has been studying hard. She ought to do well on the test tomorrow, or she should do well on the test tomorrow. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm expressing an expectation. Kay will probably do well on the test. I expect her to do well. That is what I think will happen. Okay, so should and ought to give also an expectation. Should do well. I wonder why Sue hasn't written us. B. We should have heard from her last week. We ought to have heard from her last week. The past form of should or ought to is used to mean that the speaker expected something that did not occur. So it's expectation in the negative. We should have heard. I expected. I imagined that she would have called. 100% sure K will do well on the test indicates there's no doubt. 95% K must do well on the test. This is a strong degree of certainty. I'm not talking about obligation here either. 90% sure K should do well on the test, and K ought to do well on the test. Should and ought to express a fairly strong degree of certainty about a future situation. Okay, you can look at exercises 4 and 5 in the self-study course. Let's look at the progressive verbs with always to complain. All right, Mary always leaves for school at 7:45. In sentences referring to present time, usually the simple present is used with always to describe habitual or everyday activities, such as in A, Mary always leaves. This is a normal routine for her. It's a habit. If I say instead, Mary is always leaving her dirty socks on the floor for me to pick up, who does she think I am? Her maid? In special circumstances, a speaker may use the present progressive with always to complain. That means to express annoyance or anger, right? She is always leaving her dirty socks, okay? Now, while A, this is really a fact that she always leaves for school, maybe one day she doesn't, but generally, yesterday she did, today she does, and tomorrow she will. That's the idea of the future of the present tense with always. But if I'm using it with the progressive, you see, I'm making an exaggeration because it's not possible that she is always leaving. You cannot leave and leave and leave and leave and leave in a constant way. You can leave it today, you can leave maybe another time, but it's an exaggerated condition. I am always, I am forever, or I am constantly picking up Mary's dirty socks. In addition to always, the words forever and constantly are also used with the present progressive to express annoyance. D. I didn't like having Sam for my roommate last year. He was always leaving his dirty clothes on the floor. Okay, always, forever, and constantly can also be used with the past progressive to express annoyance or anger. Okay, so he was always leaving. In that moment, at that time in the past, I was angry. I was annoyed. So I can use this to express annoyance. Mary is always leaving her dirty socks on the floor expresses annoyance. Mary always leaves her dirty socks on the floor is a statement of fact. I'm not necessarily expressing an attitude of annoyance. Annoyance may, however, be shown by the speaker's tone of voice. So if I say, Mary always leaves her dirty socks on the floor, quite pleased with this solution. Instead, Mary always leaves her dirty socks on the floor. Then I am expressing annoyance. Let's look at expressions of place with these progressive verbs, okay? What is Kay doing? She's studying in her room. B, where is Kay? She's in her room studying. C, what was Jack doing when you arrived? He was reading a book in bed. D, where was Jack when you arrived? He was in bed reading a book. An expression of place can sometimes come between the auxiliary be and the ing verb in a progressive tense, as in be and D. Is in her room studying, was in her bed reading in his bed. So in A, the focus of both the question and the answer is on Kay's activity, right? What is she doing? She is studying. What is Jack doing? What was he doing? He was reading. So I'm focusing on the activity. In B, instead, the focus of both the question and the answer are on Kay's location. Where is Kay? She's in her room. And then I say studying. So studying is just giving some extra information, what she's doing in her room. It's not really part of the question, but I can use the order in this way to give the idea of importance to one thing or another. And now you can do the exercise 6 and 7 if you want. We're going to look at the conditionals, a little bit more about the conditionals. Untrue, contrary to the fact in the present or the future. If I taught this class, I wouldn't give tests. In A, in truth, I don't teach this class. You see, if I taught, you understand that I do not teach. B, if he were here right now, he would help us. In B, he is not here. If he were here right now, and I can also say if he was here. C, if I were you, I would accept their invitation. In C, I am not you. Were is used for both singular and plural subjects. Was, with I, he, she, and it, is sometimes used in informal speech. If I was you, I'd accept their invitation. Okay, so you can use also was. Let's compare. If I had enough money, I would buy a car. In D, the speaker wants a car, but he doesn't have enough money. Would expresses desired or predictable results. If I had enough money, I do not have enough money, so I will not buy a car. E, if I had enough money, I could buy a car. In E, the speaker is expressing one possible result. Could, would be able to. That means could expresses a possible option. In true conditional expressions, conditions that express a habitual activity or a general truth, if is very close in meaning to when or whenever. These sentences have essentially the same meaning. If it rains, the street gets wet. When it rains, the street gets wet. Whenever it rains, the street gets wet. Okay, these are practically the same sentences. Let's look at mixed time in conditional sentences. Frequently, the time in the if clause and the time in the result clause are different. One clause may be in the present and the other in the past. Notice that the past and present times are mixed in these sentences. Look at A. True. I did not eat breakfast several hours ago, so I am hungry now. So I did not eat in the past, but I am hungry now. So if I want to express that in a conditional, I could say, if I had eaten breakfast several hours ago, I would not be hungry now. So you see I'm using the past perfect, had eaten, with would, and the infinitive, which is present. In C, he is not a good student. He did not study for the test yesterday. So I'm using the present, he is not a good student, with the past, he did not study. But in a conditional, if he were a good student, he would have studied for the test yesterday. So here, if he were a good student, that means now, if he were a good student today, he would have studied for the test yesterday. So I can use the present idea, this is the present condition, right? He is not a good student, if he were a good student, and the past for the result.